All right, so we've been in the midst of a series the last few weeks just looking at what does it mean to create a gospel culture? What's it mean to cultivate a gospel garden? I know that Doug's pretty proud of his tomato plants right now, or cultivating those things around. And Ann let me in a little secret that, the tomatoes in the Krieger household are going to be pretty big this year. So we're super excited about that. But we want to think of our lives as a garden, like as a gospel garden. In other words, where's your gospel neighborhood? Where are the places where God has you planted, where you live, you work, and you play? And the reality of it is God wants to bring fruit out of your life in those places. See, one of the things that makes us as followers of Jesus a little different is we live with a different intentionality than those who are not walking with Jesus. See, when I'm not walking with Jesus, it's easy for me to think that it's my life and it's my job, and it's my place, and it's all about what the environment around me is doing to help me. It's all there for me. Does that make sense? And we go through life kind of in that, and maybe you feel that temptation, like I always feel that temptation of making the surroundings about me. And Amanda reminds me a lot that it's not about you. I'm like, well, it seems like it should be, No, it's not. But sometimes we have that temptation. One of the things different about us as followers of Jesus is we see that where we live, where we work, where we play is where God has us planted to give influence and to make an impact. Like you and I are created to make an impact, to have influence, to produce fruit. That's how the story begins. We were created in God's image to produce fruit. So where you live, work, and play, that's where God has you. That's where God is giving you influence. So we had the last few weeks is unpacking that. So the first week was, we got to realize like what is your garden? Where are those places? And name those places as in, this is where God has me. And to actually believe that. And to know that when you name that, it's significant within your life. Because when you name something, you can begin to have authority over it. It doesn't have authority over you. Right? So you name, this is where I am. And then second week, we just looked at, okay, now that we've named it, what's it look like for us to till the soil in those places? What's it look like for us in our lives to get in to those places, to see what's going on, to see what the environment's like? Is it conducive for something to grow out of it? Who are the people that are in these places where we live and where we work and where we play? Is there anybody there who's opening up a relationship to us along the way? And then last week we talked about how do we plant seeds? How do we plant gospel seeds? And the planting of a gospel seed is when in the midst of a conversation with people who are in that gospel neighborhood with us, that conversation opens up a door for you, for me to say, this is what God's doing in my life. And so last week, we just really wanted to drive home the point that the work that God is doing in your life right now, those are the very seeds He's giving you to plant. Now, here's what I know. I know that I like to go through life where everything is just kosher. Like I like to go through life where there's no stress, where ultimately the goal is for life to be smooth. Anybody like that? Yeah, right? Like that's and then what happens is it becomes an idol in my life where all of a sudden I want smooth and not growth. You can't have both. Growth happens with stress. Anybody ever have a growing pain as a kid? Where you wake up and like a cramp, like, oh my God, that's a growth, right? Those happen, we all have them. That growth happens in the midst of stress. So if I only want smooth, I can't have growth. And the reality of it is this: the work that God is doing in you right now, that character work, are the very seeds on the back end of it that he wants to plant into people's lives. And so I think we were challenged. I was challenged, hopefully you were challenged last week, to think about what are the things that God's doing in my life right now? What are the 2 to 3 things of character work that God's doing in your life right now? And looking for ways, or how do we see those as seeds that we can plant into the lives of others, Today we're going to look at how do we actually give light and water and over time create the kind of environment where a seed actually sprouts into new life. We've been using this lens of John 4. If you got your Bibles with you today, you can open those up. We're going to be at John 4, just reading a few verses. We've been tracking Jesus with the woman at the well. You know, we looked at where Jesus goes to the well, which is a part of his gospel neighborhood. It's where people gather. He's making his journey from Jerusalem to Galilee, and he goes and he stops there at Samaria, and he meets this woman at the well, and they begin to have a conversation. He begins to till the soil. He tells some things about her that he's like, she's like, oh my gosh, how would you know this? Then he reveals himself to her, right? He plants a seed into her life and basically says, you can have water where you'll never be thirsty again, and reveals that he is. He plants that gospel seed, and then today we're going to see she goes and tells the community about what is happening. We begin to see some tangible growth that's happening. This seed is beginning to flourish, and we're just using that as a lens for our own life. Lexi brought home, they do these science projects still in school or whatever, and sure enough, she brought home a little styrofoam cup and a little seed and put some water on it, and before you know it, what do you have coming out of it? You've got this little sprout, right? Oh my gosh, it really works, like it happens, you know? And sometimes we don't see it. We don't see what's going on underneath the soil at first, but then eventually something beautiful comes out of it, all right? If you want to take some notes today, would encourage you to do that. I've got a couple of nuggets here this morning that I think will be helpful. I think it'll be helpful for you to take your next step towards Jesus. All right, here we go. Verse 27 there in John 4. Just then his disciples came back. They marveled that he was talking with a woman. There's 2 things going on here. For one, this woman is a Samaritan and Jesus is a Jew. And one, you have Jesus, this guy, talking to this woman. Like in that culture, you just wouldn't have that. Like we always see Jesus is willing to cross relational lines in his gospel neighborhood that most people don't. Where most people are protecting some relational boundaries with people who are different than them, Jesus walks across those. I mean, it's just a side note. It's just interesting. Like, am I the kind of person where, and it comes where I live, work, and play, do I uphold the boundaries of the culture that no one likes to cross in the relationships? Or am I actually the one who's crossing those lines, engaging in those relationships? But no one said, what do you seek, or why are you talking with her? They were like, let's just leave it alone. He's being Jesus again. Let's not, So the woman left her water jar and went away into the town and said to the people, come, see a man who told me all that I ever did. Can this be the Christ? In other words, I want you to come and see the guy that connected me to what God was doing in my life. Or I want you to come and meet this person that helped me sense where God was moving in my life. Like God was already moving in her life. Jesus just connecting her to that. You tracking? All right. Could this be the Christ? In verse 30, they went out of the town and they were coming to him. So this woman, Jesus plants a seed, and as he does that, this woman takes a step toward Jesus by telling others about him. And we see the seed that Jesus planted, it starts to sprout. All right, it starts to sprout. All right, first big nugget for you today is this. If you're taking notes, it's going to be good for you. Gospel growth is when the people you are engaging with take a step toward Jesus as they take a step towards you. Okay? When people in your gospel garden, your gospel neighborhood where you live, work, and play, when they take a step towards you, they're taking a step towards Jesus. When they get a step towards you, they're taking a step towards Jesus. Now, the big question is am I taking steps towards Jesus in my life? Because if a step towards me is a step towards Jesus, then I need to be taking steps toward him in my life. So the question is, for all of us in our life, it's always a good question every week for us to ask, like, how am I doing digging deep with my faith? Am I complacent right now? Like, where's the temperature of my life when it comes to my pursuit of Jesus in my life? Like, am I hot? Am I cold? Like, you remember the game, right? You play as kids, somebody hides something, and you're like, you're a little cold. Oh, you're a little warmer. Like, you're a little warmer. You know, when it comes to our lives, when it comes to your life right now, my life right now, would somebody look and say, you know what, you're a little cold, or you're a little warm? Am I taking steps towards Jesus in my life? And does my sharing with those who are around me flow from Jesus' work within me? Because gospel growth, right? Gospel growth is when people that you're engaging with take a step towards Jesus by taking a step towards you. All right? Second thing is this morning, I think it'll be super helpful, is gospel growth can feel like a hard and slow process. Anybody else feel that way? Like, anybody else feel the weight of, gosh, it just seems hard to have Jesus conversations with people where I work, or where I live, or where I play? Or does anybody else sometimes feel like, you know, I feel like I should do better at what Chad's talking about right now, and I just feel a little guilty that I'm not very good at this. Just know guilt is not from the Lord, okay? It's not from the Lord. Conviction is of wanting to do better and take steps, but guilt's not. Like, this whole deal is a hard and slow process. I mean, one of the big things I've been thinking of in the last, few months is when I look at the Bible, like, Jesus speaks and all of a sudden people are like, I'm in. Like it happens like super quick. Or when you look at the story of the early church in Acts and Paul's writings, and it seems like people just say something like this, well, do you want to just become a follower of Jesus? And they're like, yes, I do. It happens so fast. It happens so fast, and yet that seems so disconnected from my world. I don't know if it feels that way for you. Sometimes it's like, it's a hard and slow process, it feels like, helping people take a step towards Jesus. And here's, I think, the reality. And it's not an excuse as much for us to understand where we are. Like, as we read the Bible, it's a pre-Christian world. Like, it's pre-Christian. And so it is a new and shiny thing. The gospel is new and shiny. And people like what? They like the new and shiny. And then we have a huge block of time of a Christian world and context. And many of us, still grew up on the tail end of, at churches, you would have things like, revivals, or, you would have, people street preaching on the sidewalk, and you have this whole deal that in some ways have left people with a bad taste in their mouth. Not that anybody's doing anything wrong, but you have a whole group of people now in their life, let me say it this way. There are fewer and fewer kids who leave home who stay in church. Okay? Fewer and fewer. There are fewer and fewer people who think being a part of a community of faith is an essential part to being a human being. Lots of people think, well, if that's good for you, you should do it. But I don't really need that. But if you need that, like you should go and you should do that. What I'm getting at is it's increasingly post-Christian, which I don't think is a bad thing, because then it makes those of us who are followers of Jesus more and more, in the culture but not of it. Tracking? So it just takes longer time in a post-Christian world to really earn back the right to plant gospel seeds. Like, no doubt in my mind, Jesus is the answer. Like, Jesus is the answer. But lots of times, people aren't ready. They don't want that seed or that answer in their life because they've lost a lot of trust in people who claim to be Christians. And so we just got to earn the right. We got to earn the right relationally in people's lives to plant gospel seeds in their life. And guys, gals, I'm telling you, it's a hard and slow process. However, it's worth it. It is worth it. It's just hard. It's just hard. Now, the other reality is this, is some seeds don't sprout. Some seeds don't sprout. And that's not your deal. It's not my deal. Jesus says that I am the Lord of the harvest. So our deal, my deal, is we're called to plant. We're called to plant seeds, and God can bring the harvest. And here's the reality. Sometimes the seed that you plant, you don't get to see it sprout. Somebody else gets to see it sprout. But the other reality of it is this, is sometimes you get to see sprouts of seeds that other people planted. Are you tracking with me? And it's just this reality. It's this reality. In the same way that God is involved in this woman at the well, in the same way, God is actively, I believe this, God's actively at work in every single person's life that we encounter with, including your own. Including your own. God's at work in every single person's life, wooing them back to himself. And, Jesus says, the harvest is plentiful, but what? The laborers are what? Are few. Like, I think it's so important for this day and time in our lives to realize that God's grace is at work in every person's life that we encounter. And there are some people that we encounter where we live, work, and play, where God has prepared us to intersect their life for this moment in time that we could help them sense where God's moving in their life. And so some people have planted some seeds in people's lives where you live, work, and play, and God is going to call you to water and to give light and time to those seeds where you get to see the sprout. And so I need to see ahead of my life and say, okay, where is God's grace going before me? What is God up to in the lives of the people that are in front of me? All right? Last one is this this morning. Gospel growth is also a win for your life. Gospel growth is also a win for your life. The byproduct of when we nurture and foster and plant gospel seeds and help people to sense where God's moving in their life, the byproduct is we have a relationship that goes past a surface level. Like how many of us, like if you really, like how many legit friends do you have? You know? How often is life spent where we just have surface level friendships? Now, there's a whole nother deal where sometimes we're afraid for someone to really know us. You know what I'm saying? Like, because if they really know us, they might not want to be our friend. So sometimes we play that little deal. But I would just say, like, part of the human experience, like the realness of what it means to be human, is that we have relationships in our life that go below the surface. And I just got to tell you that I've yet to go deep with someone, go below the surface, and to say, gosh, I wish they weren't my friend. Doesn't mean people are perfect. Doesn't mean they're not hard conversations, all that kind of stuff. And whenever you become the person that you help connect someone to what God may be doing in their life, like all of a sudden there's a richness and an influence that you have in their life that you didn't have before. Are you tracking with me? And there's a depth there that the byproduct is God creates a friendship that is so valuable. I mean, at the end of the day, the people that aren't your family that will come to your funeral and honor you are the people that you've gone deep with. And so I just think, like, it's a win for us too. It's a win for us too that God opens up our doors to these relationships. And then, when we have trust, people open up their relationships, their relational circles to us. All right, to us. All right, here's the big question that I just want to leave you with this morning. And I just think as an everyday missionary, we all need to be able to name this off. And that is, who are the three people, at least three people in your gospel garden where you live, work, and play, right? That you're giving light to, that you're watering, that you're giving time to right now in your life. Who are the three? At least three. And by giving light, water, and time to, I mean this. Who are you praying for them regularly? And by praying for them regularly, I mean there's 7 days in a week. God made it an odd number, so we couldn't just be in the middle. Regularly would be more than half. Unregular would be less than half. So, for like practical, okay? Like at the end of the day, I'm serious about this missionary stuff of where you live, work, and play, and you're important. Practically, 4 days out of 7, are you praying for them by name? God, will you help me to see what's going on in Chad's life today? God, help me to see where you're going, what you're doing in his life. Give me a moment that I can connect with him in a way that's not surface level. Tracking? Like, this is not, let's do this in our flesh. This is a very spiritual, sacred thing that we do. This is not flesh work. This is not like, we're all part of Amway. Let's get them involved in the latest deal and get them to our little Sunday morning show. This is not let us come here so we can enter. No, no, no. This is we want to connect them to God Almighty, maker of heaven and earth, who gained to them in Jesus Christ to give of himself that they could have forgiveness and freedom today, tomorrow, and forever. We want to connect them to that life source so whenever we're not there, they're still connected to him. Tracking? So it's a sacred art. 4 days. Do I care enough about the people in my reach that I ask God to open up a door that I can plant a gospel seed in their life? Or am I so busy doing my little deal that I don't see the sacred, holy gospel impact that God's given me? Are you taking your next step towards Jesus in your own life? I mean, I can't say it enough to us. Like, on your journey, are you taking your next step towards Jesus in your life? Like, what's he doing in you right now? And are you moving forward? Because you and I can't take anyone where I can't take anyone where I haven't been myself. All right? And then, as we're thinking about who are the 3 people in your garden, do you pray for them regularly? Are you taking your next step toward Jesus? And are you passing through their life in an intentional way? And I'll just give you 4 ways. Like, through text. Like, do you text them? Do you have their phone number? Or do you call them? Food? Do you eat with them? Drink? Do you drink with them? Do you work with them? Like, how can you create ways? How can you create moments where a conversation could happen that you could plant a seed in their life? Okay? All right, let me just recap for you. Just super simple today. Gospel growth is when the people you're engaging with take a step towards Jesus by taking a step towards you. Gospel growth can feel like a hard and a slow process. Gospel growth is also a win for your life. And then who are your 3 people? Are you praying for them? Are you taking a step towards Jesus? And are you passing through their life in an intentional way?